Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of Georges River Local Planning Panel for Thursday, 19 December 2024. My name is Anthony Hudson. I'm the chair of this panel. The panel is currently streaming from the Georges River Council offices in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members today are Linda Gosling, expert planning member, Brian Kirk, expert panel member, and Fiona Prodromo, who is the community representative. The panel has been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including the development application that's on the agenda today. The Georges River Local Planning Panel acknowledge the Bidigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live, work and meet on these lands. The panel has one report for it today. It's undertaken a site inspection of the nearby locality, and that's the only matter we're dealing with. There's only one group of speakers who've registered to speak. It's 3 minutes per person, but we'll just see how that goes because it's only the one person and it's only the applicant. I don't think we have any residents or anyone. I would ask when you speak in the usual way, you just speak clearly and of a volume that will project into the speakers to assist. Well, we don't have speakers. To manage the live streaming process, all speakers should leave their camera and microphone turned off until their turn to speak. I remind persons that any defamatory or discriminatory or offensive language may result in the author being exposed to liability for which council and the panel take no responsibility. Also, I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed and will be made available on council's website. In accordance with the revised meeting protocols, interested parties wishing to make representation to the panel who requested, that doesn't matter, that's not relevant. We don't have any other than the applicants. We have 3 registered speakers, which we'll come to. There's no declarations of interest from other panel members. I have a non-significant conflict of interest declared as follows. I've known Michael Staunton, barrister for the applicant, for many years. I've engaged him as a barrister for clients. I've been against him in many matters. Our relationship has been of a professional nature, and I consider this a non-pecuniary conflict of interest or relationship that is not significant and requires no further action in accordance with clause 5.10 of the Local Planning Panel's Code of Conduct. The determination of the application will be made in a closed session, which is not live streamed or recorded. It'll be available on council's website once confirmed by the panel. Usually takes 2 to 3 days. So the first and only item is 40 Townsend Street, Blakehurst, and I think we're going to have, is it Michael Staunton first?
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Hudson.
Are you going to say something or you just want to answer questions or both?
I'm happy to do both, but there were 3 things I wanted to address. One was clause 6.4, the foreshore building line. The second one was desired future character, and the third one was this 2-storey issue.
Yep.
Okay, so in relation to clause 6.4, is it possible to share screen or not?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a 4.6 objection which in my opinion is not required. And the reason why it's not required is, if you can see on the screen,
yeah.
3 says development consent must not be granted for development on land to which the clause applies except for the following purposes. And it says the alteration or demolition and rebuilding, which is what we're doing, of an existing building if the footprint of the building will not extend further forward than the footprint of the existing building into the foreshore building line or coastal hazard risk map. So when you go to our plan, hopefully you can see that. It's probably even clearer on the site analysis plan. That's our building footprint. It's actually on the legend as being marked.
Yep.
and in red dots
Yep.
is the existing building, and we are not protruding further forward. So when you look at it, that's the existing building footprint in red. This area here is effectively landscaping. That is paving at grade and a pool. A pool is specifically permitted under 6.3C, which allows swimming pools.
At the bottom there.
Yeah.
So based upon that, we do not need a clause 4.6 objection. You still need to consider 4 in deciding whether to grant consent. You've got to consider the following matters. Can
I just ask one question before you go any further? What about, do you also or not rely on the other one? Is it 3 about with the unusual features of the land or whatever?
Yeah, we also rely upon that for the reasons that Andrew Martin gave. Interestingly, if you needed a 4.6, this would be one of the very rare cases where you could use WEBE number 5, where the zoning of the land is inappropriate, because this zone has an R2 and then next to it is a W2, which is above the waterline, but it's effectively zoned as a waterway. So you'd actually get away. It'd be one of the few cases where you could run a WEBE 5 on the basis that the zoning is not appropriate, therefore the development standard isn't. Anyway, 6.44, F is the only one that's engaged. Appropriate measures proposed to avoid, minimise or mitigate the impacts of the development. Now, when you're trying to work out what impacts they're talking about, the only thing of relevance in the objectives appears to be impacts on natural foreshore processes or affect the amenity of the area. That's a general issue, amenity of the area. That's not like individual houses. It's of the area. That then brings me to this question of desired future character, which is linked up with 2 stories. When you go to the DCP, hopefully you can see that on the screen, there's some objectives that inform this control, which has a maximum of 2 stories plus basement. The first one is ensure buildings are compatible with the height, bulk and scale of the desired future character of the locality. This issue of desired future character has been dealt with by Justice Preston in Wallara Council and SJD number 2. Hopefully you can see paragraph 59. Where you don't have desired future character defined, then what it says here is the desired future character of the neighbourhood or area exists before and informs the establishment of the maximum height and FSR for buildings and height and scale of developments in the neighbourhood area. So in other words, it's what's already there that you can take into account. So you may well have a control that says 2 stories is a way in which you achieve the desired future character, but I just want to show you the picture in your own report. That is the locality. This building is not 2 stories. 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 That's our proposal. There's some 2-story buildings here, but if you go to the actual locality, this is street view, albeit from a ferry. You can see that big building there that's more than 3 stories, the one next to us. If I go further along, there's the subject site. As you go further along, they're all 3-story buildings. That's my favourite, that one. So in terms of the desired future character we've got to fit in, what doesn't fit in are these buildings, which are the ones next door. You can't possibly expect us to be compatible. Now, your urban designer who takes issue with us not being compatible and affecting the amenity of the area, as you can see this development, that is not the test. The test is, are we consistent with the desired future character? Do we fit in with it? That photo speaks for itself. Effectively, we've got a building that's entirely compatible. It's not the same, it's eclectic down there, and we fit in and we're articulated and we're contemporary. The council officer assessed it against the wrong locality statement. So in the actual report, where they assessed it against locality, they assessed it against Kyle Bay. We're actually in Blakehurst locality, and Blakehurst locality desired future character is here. And it says retain and enhance the existing low density suburban residential character through articulated contemporary development that responds to the human scale. We do it. Next one's not relevant to us. It's about high density. Next one, encourage the prominence of the bushland landscape character in new development through tree planting and landscaping. We went out of our way to retain all the trees on the site. If that's not enough, impose the condition, require more landscaping. Encourage consistent setbacks of buildings from the street. not relevant. We've got a foreshore building line, we comply. Encourage retention of trees and sharing of views. We do. It was agreed in the report that our impacts are negligible. When you go to the DCP, the requirement in relation to views is minimise. Minimise here, adverse visual impact, disruption of views, loss of privacy. We do it. If there's still a concern about privacy, impose a condition for window treatments. We are a building that steps down the side in 2 pavilions, which is articulated as you go up the building with the 3rd story setback, which is entirely consistent with what's going on in the locality. That's all I wish to say.
Thank you. Now, is anyone else going to speak from your group, or
Andrew Martin was going to speak.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Unless,
how about, will we let Andrew speak first, then we can ask the questions and both of you can answer?
that's fine.
Thank you to the panel. Is it acceptable if I turn my camera off, only because my internet may drop out on the visuals?
Yep, that's fine.
I'll turn it back on for the remainder. Thank you to the panel for letting me, Andrew Martin, speak on behalf of the applicant, Town Planner. I just want to put forward some of the positives of this development that may hopefully not be lost in the report, but just to give you peace of mind in overturning this recommendation into an approval. The maximum cut is limited to around about 1 metre, which is a very healthy feature of this development on the foreshore. It is height compliant. It is FSR compliant. It does not use the W2 land for its FSR compliance, so it holds its own in terms of the R2 zoned land and complies with FSR as per the report. The applicant maintains that it satisfies all the requirements of the state environmental planning policies, and this is reinforced in the officer's report that this development does satisfy those state environmental policies. It satisfies those key controls that deal with earthworks and drainage that are in the LEP, some of those precursor type arrangements. We tick the box in terms of that, and all the details will be provided. In terms of the built form, this is a dual pavilion style of arrangement where the upper level is also tapered in, so it's not a full upper level. It does have a recessive visual element in terms of its dual pavilion presentation that reduces the overall bulk and scale of the development. And with that upper level treated differently and set slightly in, as you would have seen in those for you that we brought up. There's a strong thread in the report about clause 4.6 and the failure of our report or my report. I still stand by that 4.6, and in any event, we say you do not need that. It was requested by council officers during the assessment that we put one in, and we completed that for abundant precaution to allow the application to go through its assessment course. Otherwise, it would have been roadblocked. In any event, we say that basically the overall form of it is quite slender. It's a slender block. It complies with those state policies. It has 503 square metres of land in front of its actual building footprint. So there are 2 lots, which you would have noted from that council report. And in terms of its visual fit in the riverscape or bayscape, waterscape, it's my opinion that this building fits comfortably. There are numerous other 3-storey buildings. As we heard from Mr. Staunton, you should take into account the existing built form that's in and around that bay. That's part of that visual context. And overall, we would say that the application should be recommended for approval. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.
Panel, could I offer just a few contextual comments very briefly, please?
Yep.
Both Mr. Staunton and Andrew Martin have adequately dealt with the merit issues. Although this doesn't go to the merit issues, panel needs to be aware that an application was lodged last year and refused. An application was then lodged at the end of last year. There've been 3 RFIs. The assessment officer got changed, I think, 4 times. the poor old applicant, and this is a private home, has been to hell and back trying to get this matter resolved. 3 RFIs were lodged. They didn't make this contextual issue that's now being argued as a reason for refusal one of the critical issues at all. It was only tangentially mentioned in the 3 RFIs. Everything that's been demanded by council has been done, and the applicant is kind of at their wits' end, saying, well, what on earth are we supposed to do? There's quite a bunch of things they've done which they didn't agree with, but they've done them to meet compliance and satisfy council. So whilst it doesn't go to the merits panel, at the end of the day, the system has to act fairly and reasonably for applicants. And in this case, any refusal of this, I think, is completely unreasonable, especially given that it stands up on merits. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Questions?
I had a question, Mr. Staunton. You referred to the existing 3-storey building forms in context of the site. I am looking at the photo montage, and I believe you had that up on screen earlier. I believe it's also in the report. I do acknowledge that there are several 3-storey building forms. My understanding is that these were approved and constructed on previous legislative controls that have now been superseded. My question is your client willing to consider the removal of the 3rd floor element of the building closest to the water?
Oh, I'd have to get Mr. Martin to answer that, but can I just say one thing?
Yes.
The fact that those buildings were approved under a different regime is entirely irrelevant to the question of whether or not they inform desired future character. That's the whole point of SJD. SJD says the desired future character already exists, and when you get a control like the one we've got here to be compatible with it, you're being compatible with all of the built form that currently exists, whether it's been approved under current controls or older controls. Andrew, do you know the answer in relation to making a change to the upper floor?
Thank you, Ms. Thornton. I would, with the greatest respects, say no to remove that upper level. We think the development should be approved as it stands. Thank you.
Sorry, that doesn't answer my question though. Would your client be willing to do a redesign? It's a yes or a no. I'm just trying to understand.
So,
okay,
so what
redesign.
are we talking about in terms of redesign?
I guess I, for myself, I can't speak for anyone else on the panel, but I was wondering whether the design could be reconsidered in terms of, number one, removing the top floor, and number two, how invested is your client in the arches? You don't have to answer that. You may not have the answer now.
Can I just say I don't think the client would agree to remove the top floor.
Okay. Thank you.
I would second that. Thank you.
I can't answer. I can't answer for the client.
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Hello. Yeah, I've got a question on privacy. You have a lot of glazing on the east side and up on the living level, which is raised, which will look into the neighbour's property. There's also that linkway, which will also overlook both sides. And there's a big circular window on the west, which will overlook. Can you tell me how you will provide privacy to these neighbours?
Andrew?
Sorry. Yeah, I think on the east side, that linkway that you're talking about is substantially set back from that neighbouring boundary. I guess there are views across the boundary, but they are quite. I'm just looking at a distance that's probably sort of 6 or 8 metres set back. I put a privacy screen along that linkway at just at eye level, but it could be limited to a range of between sort of 1.5. So it'd only have to be a slender screen at eye level, just to assist with sort of tempering that sort of tendency to look across. So yeah, look, we're happy to take on board that the panel may seem necessary to assist with ameliorating any perceived amenity impacts of that linkway.
Okay, and would that work with the arched windows, do you think? Like it, so that's link. And there's also a circular window too on the west. Which
Andrew, couldn't you just have a translucent film on those windows to a height of 1.6 or 1.5?
Yeah, we could do a number of methods. There's edge film or screening, but there'd be a solution there that would be amenable to the panel if that was assisting.
Right. Okay. Just a bit more on the windows. I mean, I should probably have checked myself, but the basic certificate, the eastern glazing, is that you know, how is the solar load dealt with there? Like what is the treatment to those windows?
I wouldn't like what's on the basic certificate. Unfortunately, I can't answer that. I could try and search for it.
It does comply. So.
A few minutes to.
So you've got the
It does
certificate.
comply.
Yeah. So it's not through screening; it's through something else like double glazing or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a number of methods. Low
Mhm.
efficiency type of glass, and also the low E rated glass is quite
Yes.
expensive. So
Could be that. Okay. So
there
they're
need
really
to be a certificate that complies.
yeah, and you've got that certificate, haven't you?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, I think that's all for me.
I've got a question. Probably Andrew, you might be best placed to answer this one. I'm just wondering if you've got any survey data, putting aside the property immediately to the west, which is the subject of a separate application and matter before the court. But do you have any survey data of the that indicate that demonstrates the RLs of the properties, maybe 2 or 3 either side of the maximum height for comparison purposes?
I'm just trying to obtain the survey for the actual plan. We do have the survey. There's still information, but I take your point. Just trying to pick up that ridge level off those plans. There's head and sill heights of those windows. I'm just trying to find another plan with. Not sure if Mr. Sartor has configured it either.
No.
No, the survey's gone to the properties either side. I'm just wondering. I just wonder if the surveyor might have been, while he was out in the field, might have collected some data. If you don't have it, you don't have it. But just wondering if you do have it.
No, sure. I can't put my finger on it right now,
Okay.
Brian.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
So I think this will be the last question.
Sorry, there's gutter. There is a gutter level.
For Mr. Staunton. So are you saying that you're saying to us that we don't need the clause 4.6 and assess it on the basis that you outlined and just park the 4.6?
Yeah, I say you don't need it for the two reasons that I said.
Yeah, I understand.
If you want to say on a precautionary basis, we would have accepted the 4.6, or you want to do the 4.6,
No,
there's nothing in the objectives we offend.
Well, what I was going to go to, I wasn't even quite sure what 4.6 was 4.6ing, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no. Well, it's 4.6ing effectively the foreshore building line. So there's a line that is listed as being 30 metres from the mean high water mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say that is the development standard. So it basically says you can't build forward of the foreshore building line with the exception of X. So that foreshore building line is a de facto setback control from the water. So it's a development standard that can be 4.6. But I'm still stuck with going through 6.44.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't. As I say you don't need it confidently.
No.
Rebuilding of a building, like they wouldn't have put in the words, you can't come further forward if you had to build the same building, because you wouldn't have needed them because you're stuck with building the same building. So
Yeah, no,
project.
that part I get. I wasn't actually sure what you needed the 4. Anyway, you answered my question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Council talks about it as being a qualitative control, but it's a numerical control.
Yeah.
They've got an extract of it in the report.
But it's not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's not worry about it. Okay, I've got the idea what you said. Thank you. No other questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks for hearing from us.
So that
extra.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the panel.
So that now brings us to the end of the public part of this meeting. I think there's no one else. So we'll close this meeting now and go into a confidential session. Thank you.